Sean Stevenson. I'm Director of Technical Sales at Quali, and today's Chalk Talk is about lab as a service. First, I'd like to start off with a couple of definitions. First, what is a lab? Well, a lab is usually those things buried, deep down in the organization that nobody wants to really talk about. It takes a lot of effort to get set up, but they're the traditional areas that are always there for research and development, new product, design, dev test, regressions, POCs, support, etc. Used for many things in the organization. Secondly, what is as a service? Today, as a service basically means cloud. And what does that mean? It means giving self-service, on-demand, multi-tenant access to automated environments that are scalable. So lab as a service really means cloudifying your lab. So let's look at let's look at the problem that this solves. The problem is typically in these organizations that this right here is a lot of stuff that has to happen in the lab area, but you've got multiple users that need things. They typically have competing timelines and competing needs for assets, and it takes a long time to set up these very complex environments. Your users, they see the tip of the iceberg. The guy in the lab, this is what he sees. And the problem that this all creates is velocity. So you really decrease your agility when it gets down to really using these complex environments for development. Let me walk you real quick through kind of a traditional workflow of a user making an IT request. First, it starts off with design. The design typically happens in some form on a whiteboard, napkin, Visio, someplace where you actually really do have to add a lot more information. And this right here typically takes minutes to hours. Okay? The request, that has to be transposed into most companies, an IT ticket or an email with all of the details to fulfill the request, configurations, versions, etc. Then comes the fulfillment part. This is the part where the IT team goes and takes that request and actually has to make it all happen, make it come together. That usually involves rack and stack, configuring, pulling things from inventory, making connections, and then validating the environment so that it's ready for the users. Lastly, access. Access becomes a hodgepodge of different ways to access the different assets based on the technology that they use. Telnet, SSH, RDP, CLI, web interface, whatever it is, there's still not a holistic way to get in and get to those assets. And when it comes to the request, this is something that typically takes it'll take an hour or two to get through all the details in the request. Now, fulfilling the request, this is where the entire process slows down. And this typically takes days to months. We have some customers that take them 3 to 6 months to get very complex environments ready for their users. Now, conversely, let's look at lab as a service. Let's look at the same workflow through lab as a service. With lab as a service, you're able to go ahead and model your environment directly there in the tool that's going to be used for access and automation. And because your inventory is there, it's just like creating a Visio diagram. I'm dragging, I'm dropping, I'm drawing connectivity between them that has real effect on the automation. And this is something that takes minutes. When I want to make a request, now I don't have to go to the IT team. I can actually go to the self-service portal, make a request of an existing blueprint, or start grabbing inventory to create my own blueprint. Again, an action that takes minutes. Next, the provisioning piece. Fulfillment of the request. Fulfillment of the request is done through automation. So this gets down to, even for the most complex environments, up to 30 minutes at the most for environments that we have with customers that have up to 200-300 resources in them. And the reason why we can do that is through automation and parallel operations allow us to very quickly bring up things simultaneously. Lastly, the access. The access becomes a web portal where you can self-service getting access to the inventory, the blueprints, etc. And you've got the ability to have a single pane of glass with one method to get in and have access and command line access, RDP access to all of those assets. What makes it very powerful and what makes it great for a large organization is save and restore. I can go and I can do work on a particular environment. I can get to a certain point. Maybe I'm not finished yet. I can hit save and I can be confident that when I come back the next day after letting someone else use those assets, that I can restore it to the state that I need it to be in. So it gives me that confidence not to hoard equipment. So Lab as a Service, again, solves the problem of agility. It allows for self-service, on-demand, multi-tenant access to automated environments that become very scalable. So Lab as a Service really means cloudify your lab.